Hello, I welcome you all in the lecture series of cognitive ergonomics. In this lecture series of 12, we are going to talk about today the designer and users model system. In addition to that, we are going to also have the 7 stages of action. Before we begin with, in previous lectures, we have studied about the user type, principles, design principles, color design principles, models, and how these different components are one another are interacting with each other and playing a major role in human performance. The design of any control panel in in a cockpit of an airplane or a control system of a naval ship, a control panel of a metro train or a car, they do have some visual components in them. Some place the language is being used, some place the color is being used, some place symbols, signs are being used. Human navigation, wayfinding, the similar components are being used. The purpose for such usage is to provide an easiness to the user. So the user has to rely less on his or her memory. There should be some memory aid which can assist the user to execute the task with easiness. The whole purpose is to meet the goal. How one can meet and finish the goal line. N number of stages and number of actions are involved there. What we see here, when the designer's model and the user models are similar, then the chances of error decreases and reduces to 0. Earlier also, when we were talking about the organization of information, we talked about the schema theory, we talked about the mental model, we talked about the cognitive map. When we were talking about the mental model, that very moment we were talking about the similarity between the designer model and user model. The designer has to design or has to come up with a concept which should be similar to the user's conceptual model. If the designer's conceptual model and the user's conceptual model are not similar, then the error or the chances of error may happen. A designer is designing something, and this model seems to have similarity with the user. Now, a model can be similar, can be dissimilar, but cannot be identical. It cannot be identical in nature. The way designer is thinking, the way designer is designing the model, it cannot be identical to the user. So, these two conceptual models can be similar or can be dissimilar in nature. Similarity also, it should be there to help and assist the user. Under many circumstances, we have seen under different contexts also we have seen when the failure between the user model and the designer model is there, then the system fails. So, in the discipline of cognitive ergonomics, the idea and the perspective is that how close a designer can understand the cognition of its user. If the designer can understand the cognition of the user, or even if he is aware what is the need of the user, then the chances of success is high, the efficiency performance will be better, user satisfaction will be there, and the safety criteria will be met as well. We need to understand that there are high level theories and models are involved here. Higher cognition is involved here. The designer has to rule out the fact, the designer has to rule out the models, the designer has to rule out many informations as per the need of its user. There may be several information, there may be several data which his user do not recommend or use. Hence, it requires high level of cognition. Some level basic principles should be met, like the color coding. What should be the characteristics features on the control panel? How the bottle or the glass kettle will be inserted? Where am I going to put the coffee? These are basic principles. What should be the color? What should be the signal of error? What should be the signal of malfunctioning? Then later on, after the high level theories or models are met, basic principles are met, then comes the method of evaluation and testing. The design which a designer has built, it may not meet the reliability criteria. It may not pass the test. It may not be robust. Hence, evaluation and testing is a routine procedure which designer has to do and has to ensure that the design should meet the criteria. Now, when we were talking about the designer model and the user model, it should be close. It is very important for us to understand the stages of action, how a user is making an action. There are 7 stages of action which proposed by Don Norman in his book Design of Everyday Things. What did he propose? He proposed that there is a goal state and we have to meet the goal state. From the world, from the external context, we move in this direction. There are 3 levels involved: gulf of execution and gulf of evaluation. So from plan, gulf of execution, comparison, gulf of evaluation. Now, how are we seeing this? There is a plan required, there is some specificity is required, specific information, specific action, and then the performance has to be made. Now, this performance, when it has to be made, then this may involve the anxiety. And when we are seeing the perception, perceiving the information, that also involves anxiety. And that is why the 3 levels of processing is also there. You can see on your screen. This is visceral, this is behavioral in nature, and this is reflective. A plan needs to be performed, certain planned action is required. People come up with certain stages of action to execute the task, to fulfill the task. Among those planned actions, a specific action is being taken up. Now, when we are talking about the plan need reflection, plan need introspection. What kind of plan will be optimal? What kind of plan will be effective? Not only that, but we have to compare also the stages, which need to be executed. There we need a reflection upon which stage is better than the other. Moreover, the interpretation, how one is interpreting the current scenario or situation. If a goal has to be reached, and then towards the goal there are a number of actions are there. A number of actions may have a number of understanding towards specificity and interpretation. Which behavioral response is important? Which behavioral response is not important? Accordingly, we do the selection. Now, these series of action steps are present at each and every context. If you think about preparation of coffee, how to prepare a cup of coffee, then all these stages are there. There will be some anxiety level to find the equipment where the coffee, the jar, the water is being placed. It may involve feelings, behavioral response, how one can execute the task, to find the coffee, to find the sugar, right element, right ingredient in the preparation of coffee, and then the reflection upon it. Now, these 7 stages of action when Don Norman proposed, he mentioned there is a gulf of execution and then the gulf of evaluation. Along with that, 3 levels of processing are there: visceral, behavioral, reflective, which help towards the goal. Unlike the model of 7 stages of action, GOMS model, goal, operator, model and selection rule, was proposed by Card, Moran and Noel in 1983. They proposed this GOMS model to understand the user performance, how the user is performing. What is the goal? If the goal is to get a glass of water from the kitchen, then certain operation need to be performed, certain action need to be performed, and based on this action and performance, people meet the goal. When an aviator is flying an aeroplane, the goal is not to only fly the aeroplane in the air, but to safely land it on the ground. A number of contexts are present there, and the GOMS model can easily fit in there. What kind of method person is using, and what type of selection rule is there. GOMS in last few years has also helped us in understanding the challenges of the user. The challenges of the user which designer may not be capable enough to tap upon, which the designer may not be capable enough to identify and address. GOMS try to highlight those challenges, and the purpose of highlighting the challenges is not to demean anything, but to clearly state the problem of the user, so that the designer may modify its own procedure its own operating procedures. GOMS also assume that user formulate the goals and sub goals. There is a goal, and out of goal there is a sub goal. GOMS help us in that direction. These goals could be perceptual in nature, cognitive in nature, or motor operated. Now, one thing we have to understand when we are talking about the GOMS, the goal is there. Once the goal is perceptual in nature, so the solution, the operator, the method, selection rule, everything will be very much influenced by based on the perceptual information. Similarly, if the goal is cognitive in nature, then the human cognition will be involved. The other two process will be left alone. This cognitive method may involve the memory, attention, perception per se. And then is the motor operated. As you can see on the screen, tapping is a motor movement, double tap is a motor movement, pressing is motor movement, pinch, spread, all these processes, all these types of gestures are motor operated. These gestures highlight and suggest us that the goal can be perceptual, cognitive, or motor operated. The GOMS model is almost 40 years old, but still it is helping the user to understand and make their performance better than the previous one. Moving further, there is a conceptual model in designing. What is this conceptual model contributing? The general conceptual framework through which functionality is presented. Some functions are being presented here. So what do we understand here is the conceptual model, the concept. Here, the designer has to ensure that he provides a visual aid to its user. There are many features, there are many parts, there are many processes which go undetected to the user. There are many processes which the designer feels that his user is too naive to understand that. So they hide it. It is open for the intermittent and the expert user. However, if such processes are going to be made visible to these individuals, then their performance will be much better. Another idea is providing the feedback. How often we provide feedback to a system? Zero. It is our moral responsibility to provide feedback to any form of conceptual model design. How the models are being constructed, do they have concept in them or not? And if yes, there is a concept and there is an information present there, then definitely the feedback is going to be relevant. And the feedback should be a common practice in every teaching. When we are talking about the conceptual model in designing, we have to even ensure that the consistency should be built up. This consistency is important towards the conceptual model. So once a designer has come up with a model of the user, mental model of the user, then in that case there should be a consistency. The designer has to follow the similar procedure, similar process to build such conceptual model. Such consistency strongly and robustly designs the user interface. not only user interface but the graphical user interface, which makes the human computer interaction robust and strong. The another variable in this regard is the presenting functionality through a familiar metaphor. The metaphors, which provides an easiness to the user. Metaphors are very common in day to day life. He smells like a monkey. He yells like a yeti. He's wild like a animal. So you don't need more detailing about the characteristics or traits of a person the moment we are using the metaphors. He's slow like a snail. But in the case of human computer interaction, the kind of metaphor one is expecting has to be visual in nature, mainly visual in nature. If you all remember, a couple of lectures back, we were talking about large drills can make deeper holes. Such metaphors provides an easiness to the user to understand the efficiency of the driller or drilling machine. Similarly, such metaphors which are being used in the functionality, red means stop, delete, erased, escape from the page itself, space, you need a space, so we press space bar. These are all metaphors which helps the user to build a conceptual model. Now the fifth point, designers should make mental model as accurate as possible. Now it's a very complex task, though it is very easy to put it in a sentence form and presenting it to you here. It's a very complex and tedious task. As I said minutes ago about that designer's model and the user's mental model both can be similar or maybe dissimilar, but they can never be identical. So this last point, designer should make a mental model as accurate as possible, seems to be the most difficult task. Now, designer may come from different background, different culture, and the user may also be from different culture and different background. In that case, finding that similarity is the tedious task. Another aspect is we have to make conceptual model as direct as possible. We have to make conceptual model as simple as possible. The idea should be very simple. The moment conceptual model is implicit, it brings ambiguity, and if the conceptual model is implicit in nature, then it would be the violation of the above 5 rules. We have seen recently that the conceptual model, as clear it supports the performance, it helps the efficiency, it brings user satisfaction closely. Now, UI and UX seems to be an important part in human computer interaction. UI means user interface. What kind of interface user is having? Using that interface, user builds a experience, and that is user experience. In recent years, what we have noticed, people have paid more attention towards visual communication, visual ergonomics. And what we have found From the case study like Airbnb, the moment they change their layout, the moment they change their details, it seems that the people would like to be part of it again. People do not feel restrained, people do not feel rigid or blocked. But one thing is there, that with the use of UI UX, the sale can be increased. With the help of UI UX, the design can be helpful. Between the two images, if you see, the first image doesn't have any human being, any person. But in the second picture, there are people coming down from the staircase. Now, why do we have this app? If we ask this question to ourselves, the app which you are seeing on your screen, you will find dissimilarities. And these dissimilarities also, you will also understand that why we are having this app is because we want to travel. Travel is a personal and private matter. But to which example you will feel more associated with? So if you see this example and if you see this example, creating a profile itself is a tedious task. However, using the existing profile lowers the workload. Minor adjustment, people were being added because travel is for the people. Travel is for the people. Sign up options are there. To conclude this slide, designers' user model should be similar to the user's model. Designer's mental model, if it is dissimilar with the user's mental model, then the chances of error will be high. Followed by that, we also discussed about the 7 stages of action proposed by Don Norman. We talked about different levels of processing is there: visceral, behavioral, and reflective. Plan, specificity, execution. All these elements are helping an individual to reach towards the goal, to make an effective decision, to make an effective decision without any problem or challenges. Moreover, we also talked about the goal operator method. Different types of goals are there, different types of operators are being applied, different types of methods are being used. This suggests and highlight the user performance. And the final thing is the computational modeling. How these computational modeling can be used in designing the designing. For instance, as I showed you on the computer screen, computational modeling can be used to identify the features and what novel features can be added here. Such elements play an important role in the discipline of ergonomics, and particularly cognitive ergonomics. It may not only enhance the performance but user satisfaction and safety. With this, I will stop the session here and we will see each other in next session. Thank you.